Hi, everyone. I am Jean Sachs. I'm the CEO of Living Beyond Breast Cancer. And today we are going to talk about hereditary breast cancer. So most breast cancers are caused by mutations that happen during a person's life. So things that happen to you throughout your lifetime. However, some cancers we have learned are actually caused by a hereditary genetic mutation that can be passed on by either your mother or your father. And I think that's an important thing to remember because I think there is a misconception that this breast cancer mutation can only come from the mother. But in fact, we get 50% of our DNA from our mom and 50% of our DNA from our dad. So it's really important to understand the family history on both sides of your family. If you have a 50% chance of getting this mutation if one of your parents has it. And that does put those people at a significantly higher risk of developing breast cancer and some other cancers over the course of their lifetime. So there's an estimated 5 to 10% of breast cancers actually are linked to a hereditary gene mutation. So that's not really that many, but for those people, it is significant. And the most well-known mutations are the BRCA1 and the BRCA2 mutations, although there are others that have been discovered, and I'm sure over time there will be many more. So researchers estimate that about 1 in 800 people in the United States have a hereditary gene mutation, but they are absolutely more prevalent in certain ethnic groups. And one of those ethnic groups are Ashkenazi Jews, where the chance is actually 1 in 40. That a Jewish Ashkenazi person would carry the breast cancer gene mutation. I am an Ashkenazi Jew, and certainly I was tested. And if anyone out there is listening, if you are of Ashkenazi descent, it's really important to have a conversation with your doctor. So today, in honor of National Hereditary Breast and Ovarian Cancer Week, we are speaking with a mother and daughter team, which is so fun. I love to talk to mothers and daughters. So Frisch is joined by her daughter, Jamie Vento, and they are going to share the personal impact that hereditary breast cancer has had on their family and what they have done about it. So thank you so much, Anne and Jamie. We are really happy to have both of you join us this morning.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Great. So I'm going to start with Anne. I know that from what I've heard that you were diagnosed about 13 years ago, and you had a lumpectomy and some other breast cancer treatments, and then you decided to actually be tested for the genetic mutation. So my first question is, what made you decide to be tested? This was back in 2007, where I think it wasn't as well known as it is today.
Well, I had, at that point, after I'd finished with my surgeon related to my lumpectomy and got all the specifics related to the specifics on my breast cancer, I was referred to my oncologist. And I met him and talked to him about the information that was derived from the lumpectomy, and talked about my descent, the fact that my mom had had breast cancer about 13 years prior to that. And he advised me that I should be genetically tested because I was of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, and that if in fact I did carry the gene, I carried approximately an 85% chance of getting a recurrent breast cancer. And he felt that that was just way too high. He was extremely adamant about the fact that I should be tested, even though I didn't have a long list of relatives. I mean, it was only my mom. And it was when she was older, she was already 60 years old when she had been diagnosed. A lot of the hereditary breast cancers occur in much younger people, and you see a link going on in 20s and 30s and 40s. But he still was insistent that I be tested. He said at the time, most people that he recommends get tested never do. Gave me the information and said, I hope you do this.
Well, good
So
for him.
I contemplated it, and I had been kind of reassured by my surgeon that it was unlikely that I would test positive. Otherwise, if she thought that I was at high risk for the mutation, she would have had me do this prior to my lumpectomy. However, as it turned out, she was wrong.
Right.
And that's how I ended up.
Well, good for your doctor and good for you. And I think you're right that a lot of people are told to consider doing this, but they don't follow through. And I think another really good point that you made is sometimes there's not a lot of breast cancer in the family, and it really depends on how many kids there are, how many people there are. There's sometimes very small families. So that's not, well, it's an important thing to look at. It's not the only thing, and a genetic counselor can help you with that. So I know when you did get tested, you found out that you actually do carry the BRCA2 mutation, which, as we now know, also would put you at higher risk for ovarian cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So did you pursue further treatment at that time?
Oh, absolutely. My first course of action was that I had my ovaries removed, because that seemed like, at least at the time, the easier thing to do. I was already at menopause age. I didn't really need my ovaries, although they are associated with, by removing them, an increase in heart disease for women and other problems because of the loss of estrogen. But because my breast cancer was highly receptive to estrogen, it seemed like if that was the food that the breast cancer was getting to thrive, best to remove them. So I had my ovaries removed, which, other than, psychologically how that is, was a very easy procedure. And then took a little bit more time to contemplate having the bilateral mastectomies and reconstruction, even though every 3 months when I saw my doctor, he kept harping on the fact that you need to do this. He would pull out presentations that would show me data that supported the practice of removing breasts and ovaries, and said I was lucky this time that my breast cancer wasn't a breast cancer that was particularly difficult to treat, mm-hmm. or found at a later stage, but I might not be as lucky the next time.
Right. So you had a lot of good advice, which is
Yes.
good. And that's a lot of surgery. So I think it is important for people to know this is a big deal. It's not something you have to it's not taken lightly, something you have to think through really carefully. So I know you met with a genetic counselor, and they play such an important role, really plug for genetic counselors. And you had 2 young daughters at the time who were in their early 20s. So what did the genetic counselor tell you to do about sharing the news with them as well as other members of your family?
Well, she didn't have any real issue with me sharing the information. But she did express concern over having them tested at such an early age. As I recall, and it was, many years ago, she says, well, what are they going to do with that information at that point? And I happen to be a nurse by profession. So I want to say that I'm a little bit smarter and a little bit more, I'm not as naive as maybe the general public would be. So I thought to myself, well, that doesn't sound particularly smart, because in this country, we do so much with preventative medicine that if they were tested and they found out that they carried the genetic mutation, we could use that knowledge as power. And we could get earlier screenings and just be smarter about this. And while it is devastating and it is a lot for a 20-something to carry over their head for the majority of their life, I figured that I was at least halfway through my life when I found out, but they're probably only 25% or 20% through with their life. I just felt that information was critical to have. And that's the conversation that I had with my daughters. Of course, that I said, I will support anything that you want to do. But at the time, they said, I mean, they're a lot like me. They said, well, why wouldn't we get tested? We want to know. And then that's exactly what happened.
Great. So I want to bring your daughter Jamie into the discussion, but I just want to make the comment that this really shows how some of the protocols change when you are one of the earlier people who's, you benefited from being one of probably the earliest people to be tested for the genetic mutation. And back in 2007, it was kind of like, why should more people be tested? I think the thinking has really changed now. And I know the recommendation is for girls age 25 would be the right time to get tested. And for boys age 30, again, after counseling and making your own decision. And there are things that, there are a lot of actionable things you can do to assess your risk even before you consider surgery. So good for you for being a pioneer in every way and empowering your daughters. So Jamie, tell us what it was like with you when you had that conversation with your mom, and how you made the decision to go ahead and get tested.
Sure. It was really a no-brainer for me. She told us, I had seen what she had just gone through with the breast cancer. I, felt, well, this could be me one day. And not to mention, it could be many other people. And I was young enough, I was in my early 20s. I thought I wasn't so worried about this right now, and I wasn't scared. So I thought I would definitely get tested. I didn't have to think about it. I felt good with my decision, as did my sister, and we decided together that we were going to get tested. And the way the coin dropped was 50-50, and not in my favor, but I was okay with it. And I took that as just power to be able to now know that I had something to monitor and something to look out for in my future. And, it would be advantageous for me in the fact that now I'm able to get mammographies earlier, ultrasounds earlier, and hopefully don't have to, find anything. But if I do, I was looking for it. So I felt good in that sense.
Right. So when you got the information that you were in fact positive for the gene mutation, were you in a relationship at the time? What were kind of some of the things that went through your mind about, having children or sharing the news with a partner?
Sure. Yes, I was actually dating my now husband. And he was very supportive at the time, and even when he found out that I had this, he didn't run away shortly after that. And yes, in the back of my mind, it stood out that we wanted to have children, and maybe I'd have children a little earlier than maybe I wanted to, because of the fact that I was at some point going to have a preventative mastectomy to lower my odds of developing breast cancer in the future. But he was great. He stood by me, and we were able to have two beautiful daughters over the next 10 years. And yes, and really I didn't have to deal with any, breast cancer diagnosis at that point. So even though I was getting screened for it.
Okay, that's great. And it's wonderful to know that there is support, because I think it's very confusing, to know, what does this mean? You have a risk for breast cancer and you're young and healthy. So happy that your partner was supportive and that, you were able to start building your family. So tell us what you did when you did decide to do some proactive steps to manage your risk.
Sure. So I had been going for mammographies, ultrasounds, MRIs, basically every 6 months, alternating. And it gets to be a lot, and it gets to be expensive as well. And I thought to myself, well, I'm done breastfeeding. My kids are old enough where I don't have to walk around holding them anymore all the time. Now might be a good time to think about getting a prophylactic mastectomy. The timing was right, so I decided, now is the time. I actually walked in there with a smile. Everyone else walked in there crying, and I was like, bye, like, I'm excited for this. Will be, great. And I'll be getting rid of hopefully my chance of developing breast cancer in the future. Unfortunately, that didn't work out as planned when I woke up, but I was, very excited, not excited, but I was fine about going in and having the surgery.
So you did learn that after the surgery that you already had breast cancer, right?
Correct. So I came out of the surgery. They were not sure. They said they had to wait till they got pathology back, but based on some tests that they had run during surgery, they thought that it could have been a breast cancer diagnosis. So I had to wait a few days to get that information back. And when I did, they said, I'm sorry to tell you, you do have breast cancer, stage 1. I was shocked. I was scared. The one comfort I had was that, my mother was there and she had gone through the same thing. And not only that, our breast cancers were exactly the same in terms of all the genetic components of it and the stages. So, she really reassured me that I was going to be fine. And, your first thought is you're going to have to go through chemo, you're going to lose your hair, just talking me down off of a cliff, basically, and saying, this is a bad situation, but it's not the worst situation. You're going to be
right. So interesting to know that even though you were having such careful screening, it does show that early breast cancer is hard to pick up. But the fact that you knew you were at high risk, you were having that and picked up on the surgery, but probably who knows when they would have found it had you delayed. So
I had screenings 2 months before the surgery and they didn't see it.
Yeah, which is a common story, as we know.
It's scary.
Yeah. So Anne, what was this all like for you? We're Jewish, we're naturally guilty. So, how was it for you to feel like, you had passed this on, obviously you had gotten it from someone, and watching your young daughter go through this?
I don't accept really any personal guilt for this. I'm a little smarter than that, I think, or maybe that's not the right word, but look, there's so many things that you can pass on to your children. It's just the luck of the draw. In retrospect, it looks like my mom passed it on to us, but we didn't know that at the time. And, when I found this out, I didn't say, oh, my lousy mom, how could she have done such a thing? We don't manufacture our genetic makeup. So I didn't take this gene in place of another gene. Mm-hmm. This is what God handed us. And I felt bad. I remember sitting in the waiting room when the doctor came out and telling us that they did some frozen sections on the pathology, and it looked like she may have had already some early stage breast cancer. And I remember starting to cry and saying, oh my God, this damn BRCA gene, it just doesn't go away. But I never felt guilty that I passed it to my daughter. I didn't do it intentionally. Everything that I've done in my family and in my life has always been with my children in mind and giving them the best opportunity. I thought, thank goodness that I wasn't selfish and that I had this genetic test so that I could share that with my daughters. And we made the right decision. Okay. Absolutely. The knowledge was the power. Okay. Yeah. And had I not done the test, I would have felt really guilty, because I would have then said to myself, I could have done something. Maybe this could have fast forwarded 5-10 years where Jamie could have been in this situation with stage 3 or stage 4 breast cancer. And then, hindsight's 2020, you say, oh my God, I should have done that test. That could have saved us all. But I felt like we did everything that we could have physically done in our power as a family. And this is what it turned out to be, but it's okay because we still beat it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's so important and good for you for not carrying the guilt, and also knowing that, you gave Jamie the opportunity to change her fate. I mean, she was diagnosed quite earlier than your diagnosis. So again, we can't predict when this is going to happen. So, and Jamie was able to have children. Sounds like, your life is moving forward just the way you want it. So I know one thing that must be still looming over you, Jamie, is because you carry the BRCA2 mutation, your risk for ovarian cancer. So wondering where you are in dealing with that.
Yes, I've been under the care of a doctor, a gynecological oncologist, who has advised me that I could probably wait a few years before I need to remove the ovaries. However, my breast oncologist, also my mother's doctor, he's been very adamant about the fact that I need to do it now. He wants them out, and every time I go see him, he's like, well, did you do it yet? I said, no, this is a harder decision for me than the chest was, than the breasts were. And I was close last November. I had it scheduled. I almost did it. And then in talking to that doctor at Sloan Kettering, she said, if you're not sure, I think you could probably wait till you're 40. Right now I'm 36. She said, you could probably wait till you're at least in your early 40s before we do it, if you're having, reservations about this. I don't know how it's going to affect my day-to-day, with the hormones. And it made me nervous because I'm not at that menopause point yet. So to put myself into menopause knowingly, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I'm not sure. I don't want another surprise like I had with the breast cancer. But, I think I still might have a little more time. It's kind of like playing Russian roulette. I'm kind of not about this, but I might do it in the next couple of years because I do think that there is some definitely positives to having them out in my case, because obviously my breast cancer was estrogen, progesterone positive and is fueled by the estrogen in my body and my ovaries. So getting them out would definitely save me the worry of one day being diagnosed with ovarian cancer.
Yeah, and it is a much bigger decision. And I am so happy that both of you have such great doctors who are being so compassionate and thoughtful, because your quality of life is impacted in a different way being thrown into menopause and all the other issues. Very often in your situation, you might be allowed to take some hormone replacement therapy for a period of time, or no, that was definitely a no. Sometimes there's doctors that are a little bit more flexible, but I will be thinking of you. And for those that carry the BRCA1 mutation, they don't have that same risk, but that breast cancer is typically triple negative. So it's like, which do you want? There's not a good choice. Well, I'm so impressed with how open your family is and talking about this. Over the years, I've talked to so many people, and it's not like this. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. Very reluctant to get tested, very worried about having the information, would rather not know. So thank you so much for both being so brave and for sharing your story, because I think this will help so many people. So before we end, is there anything I missed?
No, I think you did a really good job of kind of highlighting our journey. I just would like to say to fellow women and men that are contemplating this, you can't force yourself to do this, but if you look at the statistics, they definitely weigh in favor of being proactive. Mm-hmm. And, you have to be ready. But I valued my life and I valued my children's life and my family's life enough to know that this was the right thing for our family.
Right.
And we consider ourselves, even though it was, a few rough years, we consider ourselves very, very fortunate that we've passed this, and we don't sit by waiting for the next shoe to drop.
Yep.
If it drops, it drops. But we're grateful that we had the opportunity to have this testing.
Right. And then hopefully, Jamie, my hope is that by the time your daughters come of age, that we will be in a really different place with breast cancer, and you won't have to have this hard conversation. So let's just hope that the science keeps moving in the right direction, because I'm sure that, weighs on you as well. Well, it's been lovely talking to both of you. I'll just say that my mom also had breast cancer and was never tested, and she actually died of lung cancer 10 years ago. But after she passed away, even though she had so much treatment, nobody ever tested her. And my brother has 5 daughters. I have a son, and I insisted that we get tested. So we'll never know whether she carried it or not, because we were both negative, but it's just kind of one of those we don't know. So I would say it's better to know. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, there are lots of resources out there, obviously at lbbc.org, but also one of our partner organizations who we absolutely love to work with, which is sharesharit.org, which I know you're both really involved with.
Yeah.
And while they started as, mostly serving the Jewish population, they really serve anybody, and their resources on this topic are so deep. So I encourage listeners to check out their website and use them for more information. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Remember, Living Beyond Breast Cancer, we have closed Facebook pages. If you want to join them and get real-time support, just go onto our website and we'll connect you. Otherwise, stay well and stay healthy. Thank you.